Islam Makhachev just completely dominated JDM this weekend at UFC 322. He completely outmatched JDM in every aspect of the fight and looked unstoppable while doing it. Now coming into this fight, a lot of people, including myself, thought that it was going to be a very close fight, primarily due to the fact that in his last few performances, JDM looked very sharp in terms of his striking. His boxing was absolutely crisp, his momentum was high, he was getting a lot of wins, he was knocking guys out, and his last couple of performances showed that he had really good takedown defense. However, Islam Makhachev did the smartest thing possible when the fight began. As soon as the fight began, Islam Makhachev went for those calf kicks. By prioritizing the calf kicks at the start, it made sure that JDM couldn't put his weight behind the front leg, and as being a boxer that he is, it takes away that power he has behind a lot of his shots. He can't really put his foot down and strike with Islam Makhachev, which took away one of JDM's biggest assets in that fight. And all Islam needed was a few calf kicks to just damage that leg. As you can see later in the rounds in the fight, JDM was limping on that leg. Islam successfully eliminated the boxing threat of JDM. By implementing the calf kicks, it really did damage to JDM's leg and ruined JDM's balance on his front foot. It had to constantly make him switch stances whenever Islam kicked his right leg, and also Islam did a really good job at clinching JDM whenever he could, and by doing that it just ruined the chances of JDM throwing proper punches as a boxer, and it just ruined his whole rhythm of gaining momentum and throwing punches at Makhachev. By implementing the basics of striking and using correct timing, Islam completely just nullified JDM on the feet and eliminated the threat that he originally was. A critical mistake for JDM in this fight was the use of the high guard. By using the high guard was not a great idea for JDM, as it doesn't allow him to react quickly and get his hands down to stop the takedowns of Islam Makhachev. An example similar to this is Merab versus Peter Yan. Yan in that fight was very defensive, had the high guard and was being too technical and not fighting like a dog. When you fight like a dog against a wrestler like Merab for example, it can really make your performance a lot better. Now the same could be said with JDM versus Islam. JDM kept switching stances, having his high guard, and it didn't allow him to react well to the wrestling in this fight. Using the high guard is very effective when fighting strikers, however when fighting grapplers, it is best to lower your hands as it allows you to stop the takedowns a lot easier. Makhachev's timing and precision in this fight was just evident, as on the feet he was precise, timed everything correctly, and the speed of his takedowns and the way he timed them in this fight was just there. Every takedown he went through, he got them. And when Makhachev did get him on the ground, the control time he had on JDM was just astonishing. He was just having him there throughout. Whenever he wanted him, he couldn't get up, and later in the fight you can see JDM just struggling. He was having a lot of difficulty just getting up, and he went from mean mugging Islam Makhachev at the start of the fight to looking like he was on the verge of tears. Now one thing that JDM did really well in this fight was the submission defense that he had. Working with Craig Jones in this fight allowed him to really prevent the submission threat that Islam Makhachev has, and by doing that he managed to really survive as much as he did. He managed to prevent a lot of Darce chokes from happening and a lot of Kimuras. However, although he did manage to survive the submission attacks, ultimately he just could not get Islam Makhachev off of him. He was just controlled a lot of this fight, and Islam just looked too strong and big for JDM to handle. Now coming into this fight, a lot of us were wondering how will Islam deal with the weight change. Going from 55 to 70 is a big jump, and we were wondering, will JDM be too big for him? Can he handle the change in weight, and will he gas out or perform even worse than he did at lightweight? However, we were really surprised in this fight, as he did look quite big in this fight. He looked as big as JDM, if not bigger, and his cardio was on point. He looked really better than he did ever throughout his whole career than he did at lightweight, which was really impressive, as this was Makhachev's first fight at welterweight, and he was able to just manhandle and just dominate JDM throughout this whole fight in every aspect, which was really impressive. This fight just further builds on Islam Makhachev's legacy, as he's just taken out a lot of the fighters at lightweight and now has just defeated the welterweight king, which was Jack Della Maddalena. It puts him on the conversations of the GOATs as one of the best of all times in mixed martial arts, and it gets us thinking, who currently can defeat Islam Makhachev? You have a lot of names in the welterweight division that have the potential to make a really good fight with Islam Makhachev, such as names like Carlos Prates, Michael Morales, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, and these fighters are up and coming in their division, such as Carlos Prates, who fought on the same card as Islam Makhachev, just knocked out Leon Edwards in brutal fashion, who was the next champion, which was really impressive. You've got Michael Morales, who was fighting Sean Brady this weekend as well in the same card and knocked him out in the first round, which was also really impressive. And you also have Shavkat Rakhmonov, who for many people is the boogeyman of the division and is quite big for the division. He stands at 6'1", is a lot bigger than Islam Makhachev, so it would be interesting to see how Islam deals with bigger fighters than him. You also have a fight between Bilal Muhammad and Ian Gary happening soon, and it would be interesting to see who wins that fight between them fighters, as we will be able to see either Islam versus Ian Gary or Islam versus Bilal Muhammad, which could be a really high level match between two wrestlers. You also have a money fight between Islam Makhachev and Kamaru Usman. Although Usman has been on a losing streak recently and has just won against Buckley, I believe that Kamaru Usman wouldn't be a good fight for Islam Makhachev, primarily being that he is quite out of his prime. He's not the fighter he was a couple of years ago, and Islam Makhachev, I see him dominating him throughout the entire fight. However, a money fight that could happen that is really interesting, and I'm quite behind this as well, is a fight between Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev, as it's a fight that many fight fans around the world really want to see. But I do wonder if Islam Makhachev will go down to 155 again and fight Ilia, because if he does, I don't really see that happening due to the weight cut significantly impacting Islam, and you know, he's just came to welterweight. Does he really want to go back down to 155 and defend that bout, or will Ilia come up to 170? However, if it does happen at 155, I do see Ilia slightly performing better due to the weight difference. However, if Ilia has to come up to 170, then I do favour Islam Makhachev's chances of winning, primarily due to his size. Although Ilia is listed as 5'7", he's realistically 5'5", and Islam Makhachev is a lot bigger, and I think that his wrestling is a lot better. Now, Ilia does have a puncher's chance of knocking out Islam Makhachev, but in general, Islam is a lot defensively there, and his wrestling is a lot better, so I see his chances a lot better at welterweight. Now, for JDM, it's not over yet. He still is a great fighter, and it's just unfortunate that his first title defense was against Islam Makhachev. For JDM, he just needs to keep working on the wrestling, his wrestling defense, his submission defense there, so that's nothing to worry about. He needs to just work on that wrestling defense, make sure he knows when to use the high guard effectively and keep his balance and watch out for low kicks, and have matchups against other contenders in the welterweight division to get wins again. You could fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, Michael Morales, Sean Brady, Carlos Prates. Fight one of those fighters or a couple of them, get a couple wins again, improve himself, and he can be in the conversation for another title shot if he improves. But anyways, the welterweight division looks really stacked right now. We have a lot of great fighters and a lot of great potential matchups, and it looks more exciting than the lightweight division, which is quite surprising because for the last couple of years the lightweight division has been dominating, but now there's been a big shift and we now have more and more exciting fights lined up in the welterweight division. But anyways, that's been the breakdown of this fight. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.